parents took you to. Can you give us a rundown on how was your journey on education, please?
Yes, on issue of education, I will say that it wasn't easy at the beginning, So, like when I enrolled for the first time, I was enrolled at where I did my rehabilitations. But after the rehabilitation, it's just like what we normally say about persons with disabilities. Most of those areas you go, especially those of us that had polio. So when they keep taking you from one point to the other, it normally affect your education. So because after my rehabilitation, when I was also going to school there, I had to go to where my parents were residing. I had to miss like 3 years. I had to start afresh. So I went to the school because it was a conventional school. So where every other child we are going to school and all that. So majority of the challenges I had was challenges that has to do with physical structures. Majority of the structure, the school structure was not just friendly. So I had to cross sometimes to get into the classrooms and all that. So, but because my parents continued to tell me that you need to acquire education before you can be recognized in the society. So that made me to see education as the only way, the only key to my success. So I was so determined. So it was almost the same experience in secondary school. Then in the university was still the same experience, but the university was a bit different in the sense that I met people who are more, so because it wasn't the kind of discrimination I was facing in the secondary school that I actually faced in the university. In the secondary school, it was more like, at a time, people were no longer discriminating. Initially, they were, because they were looking at me as someone they should isolate themselves from. So then I can remember when I was enjoying a full locker on my own, when every other student were actually staying away from me.
Wow.
But after the first, I think my JS classes, so they got to find out that this guy is actually very intelligent. And some of them started coming close to me. So I started making a whole lot of friends. Then university was actually a different thing. People were not isolating, but there was still another kind of discrimination that was actually coming, in the sense that you just have very few friends, mostly your class. So other people were just looking at you, differently.
With sympathy.
Sympathy, sort of. But something happened that changed everything. It was what happened that changed everything was when there was time for school politics, especially my faculty, I declared interest. So when I declared interest, they listened to my ideas, my manifesto, the way I was presenting my manifesto, and it became a different thing altogether. Mm-hmm. And as a lot of students now begin to reckon with me, so a lot of them had to come, to say this person has something to offer, even though it's a person with disability. So they begin to understand that disability, in as much as he has a disability, there's so much he can offer. So it becomes a different thing altogether. And that was what actually changed the mindset of a whole lot of them. And it became a different story until I graduated.
In other words, you're saying that you made them saw that there's ability in disability.
Sure.
They saw it, they understood it. I love that part.
Yeah.
So far, did you experience any problems getting admission, or immediately after school you just got the admission?
Yeah, I experienced, when I finished secondary, it took some time if I could get admission. I spent like 3 years if I could get admission, and there was something remarkable that happened at that time. I had to, because I had to do my OND. So after my OND, I find it difficult getting my direct entry. So I will apply, it's people who have money. It was like kind of, you have to bribe your way before you get admission. So, but what I did was I had to write to the VC of the school I was applying. So when I wrote to the VC, then the VC, after reading my letter, he had to invite me. So then he invited me and listened to me. So, but the point I made in my letter was that people like me should be given preferential treatment. Because if you don't do that, you are discouraging them from going to school.
Exactly.
So the VC reasoned along. He had to present it to the school senate, and they looked at it. And what that my advocacy did was that the VC from that very day made it a policy of that school that if any person with disability apply, that person should be given admission.
In essence,
And the school senate approved it on that very day.
Wow.
Yes, that was what happened. And that was how I got admission.
Once a comrade,
so, yes,
always
so
a comrade.
My advocacy started at that point.
That's true.
So because I wrote that letter, took some of my pictures, attached them, attached my results, I was qualified, but because I couldn't bribe, but that actually made it possible.
People with disabilities always been a comrade. So, comrade, I don't know, ever since you said this, I've just been having the urge to call you comrade, especially like comrade.
Yeah.
So, comrade, how has been your experience at work? What is your work experience? Did you have any problems?
Yeah, one of the challenges we'll be having when it comes to work is in Nigeria we have a society that is very unfriendly to persons with disabilities. You know, you see most of the buildings, because I find myself in a profession that needs to be taking me around, go to offices, visit people in their offices, because I'm into journalism. I'm actually promoting the rights of persons with disabilities. Some of them, you could not get to some of them because all the public buildings, I can say that almost 80 or 90% of the public buildings that we have are not just, they are not accessible. It makes it so difficult for me to get to some of these people, you know, speaking to them, talking to them. So, and even yesterday, I had another challenge of going to a particular place. I don't want to mention the place, but because I cannot even access their big organ, I couldn't just speak to them. I couldn't make any headway there because they were like, the guy is on the 6th floor and they cannot come down to see you. So I spent some time. I had to even be talking to his subordinate, which can't give me what I want. So this is just one of the challenges I am facing. The society is not just accessible for persons with disabilities. The entire system is unfriendly to persons with disabilities, and that's a big challenge.
Okay. Wow. I like
so
it that
the experience has not been so friendly at all. But we're pushing through.
I'm glad we are. Well, I like the fact that you stress the important part where most of the buildings are inaccessible. And I'm sure somewhere, somehow, someone or some places are watching and feel the need to do something about it. Yeah. Now, comrade, please tell us, what have been your most memorable moments as a person with disability?
Yeah, there are so many memorable moments. I will start by the time I became a graduate. You know, is the what my mother said on that very day. You know, because they were like, a child people said I should throw away is a child that the society will be proud of today.
Amen.
So that was one. Then two was when I started indulging into disability advocacy. There has been a whole lot of achievement that has been so memorable. I can remember when I was doing one of the projects I did in Plateau State, that I went to the 17 local governments in that state, talking to persons with disabilities in the hinterland, in some of the villages, and sharing their experiences was so memorable to me, because I saw a whole lot of persons with disabilities in their entire life. They have not had any opportunity talking to anybody, sharing their experiences to anybody. And these are people who have a whole lot of challenges. All they need to do is to just add some of those challenges and possibly get people to assist them. And through there, I actually linked them up to a whole lot of opportunity. So it was so memorable to me. I can't forget. That was in 2020, between 2020, August 2020 to March 2021. So it was like around 8 to 9 months of project I did there. So it was so memorable, and I love what actually happened. Then again, one key one again was being part of the struggle to have disability art. So we saw there was a struggle of, some people started it before I joined. Then I joined it, and it was so memorable for me because as soon as I joined it, it was not up to 4 years I joined it. President Muhammad Buhari signed it into law. So I was part of the history. So being part of the history made it so memorable to me that today we can have a law in Nigeria that can protect the right of persons with disabilities. That I can actually go out there and say, yes, I have a right. And this should be provided based on the fact that it's my right. Even the issue of the access I'm talking about is already my right. We just have like 5 years transitory period. By next year, it will clock 5 years. So by then, if any public building is not making it, their building accessible for me, I have the right to go to court.
That's true.
You know, and ask court to compel them to provide those disability features. So these are some of there's a whole lot of them, but these are just the ones I can remember now.
So if I get you correctly, your most memorable moments are the moments you've created impact in the lives of people with disability.
Sure.
Comrade, I am sure a lot of people with disability would look up to you and want to be like you. Now, Comrade, I was made to understand that you have a magazine for people with disability. What inspired that magazine?
Yes, what actually inspired my magazine, the magazine we started, I think, in 2008, if I'm not mistaken. We started this magazine just because of the fact that we understood that persons with disability need to have a voice. They need to also talk about their own issues in their own way, you know. So we understood that in as much as we have the media, yes, there still need to have people within our own. We need to also have a media that will have to talk about our own issues. You know, we now need to amplify our own voice. And that is exactly why we came up with it, because of the fact that we have understood that disability is not because of us, it's about the society. It's the perception of the people, you know. It's so because when people continue to have wrong perception about disability, we will continue to suffer the discrimination that we are suffering. So we need to actually change the perception of people. So that's why we came up with the magazine, so that we can tell our story. The public get to understand our story, understand things from our own point.
Thank you
in order for
very
them
much.
to begin to change their perception.
Thank you very, very much. We're happy for that. So my question is, how do you think the government, or we're making impact so much that the government should key into the disability? Because you said now that in the next a year or two, that it will be implemented, and you will implement it. It's not just up to a year or two, it's just by January next year. By January 2024, Disability Act, the 5 years grace will be over. The drafters of this law, what they did was that in their own wisdom, they understood that Nigeria has operated in so many years without having issues of persons with disabilities in mind, or making provision for persons with disabilities. So they gave them this room for them to do some modifications
in their own buildings, so that those buildings will have facilities. If you don't have a lift, you provide a lift. If you don't have ramps, you make those ramps you provide those ramps, just to do modifications in your building for you to conform with the law. And with the law we're talking about is Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act 2018. Is an act of National Assembly which passed first reading, second reading, and third reading. And it was assented to by President Muhammad Buhari in January 2019. So it's a law. So for that reason, we have the right to take up litigation to get anybody that is violating our right, to face the penalties. And when you go through the law, the penalties that, it's as if the law has it that if is a company, the amount they will pay. And one interesting thing about this law is that the money will be paid to that person with disability. Yes. So we are encouraged to always take up litigations. And it is in two ways. I am not a lawyer, but when you go to the law, you will find out what I'm also talking about is how the people should go and download them from download them and read them, because they say ignorance of the law is not an excuse. So when the time comes, some of us can take up option of litigation, but we don't want to take Nigerians to court. We want Nigerians to see that persons with disabilities are part and parcel of the society. They should also begin to put up those systems that make us to have an enabling environment to do our businesses and to go about our issues. We want to be in the recreation where other people are. We want to be in the offices where other people are. So there's nothing wrong about a person with disability wanting to go to a club.
That's true.
You understand? That club should be made accessible for him. The law says every public building, there's no exception.
That's true.
Your residential building is not involved. But once it's a public building, it must be made accessible for persons with disabilities.
All right then. Well, you have been watching us on Global TV, and we have been following Comrade Chris Obiora Agbo. And he has been giving us bit by bit the beauty of ability in disability. And don't forget, you can follow us on all of our social medias on Global TV Nigeria, and on Twitter or Facebook, all social media. And don't forget, you've been watching us on Global TV channel 276 on Star Times. I'm your host, Fauzia Lukman. And we have been talking to Comrade Obiora Chris Agbo. Comrade Obiora, thank you so much for coming, and we hope that next time when we call you, you'd give us listening ears.
Yes, I will always make myself available. If about talking about disability issues, we'll continue to add our voice to make sure that the society will be made very inclusive for everybody.
Thank you very much. Well, join us again, same time next week on same station. I remain your host, Fauzia Lukman. See you some other time.
Global Television, building the nation.
Further down the valley lies the town of Bontoc. It has neither airport nor railway station, so the road is vital for its 15,000 inhabitants. If the Kalinga is blocked, the entire region is paralyzed. And even the bone snake charms are powerless. The only means of transport in town are these peculiar, customized